This is Illiterate. My name is Evan.
My name is Taylor. I read a book.
I watched two movies this week. One's a secret. We'll get into that later. But we are starting with Call of the Wild. Odd. Again, kind of like the Cats episode. We're going to talk about the uncanniness of this, but there's a bright side to it. But we're going to start with actually Jack London and Call of the Wild and start to break that down. And we'll make our way through this.
Because this book came out so long ago, 1903. If you have listened to the Animal Farm episode where we talked about how George Orwell, the author of Animal Farm, went to live with the commoners in London, down and out in Paris and London, Evan mentioned, this is the guy that he was inspired by for doing that.
Oh.
Because Jack London...
God,
his life is an insane,
Call of the Wild.
insane life. I won't get in too much into his life. The book that I did read was just called Jack London by Alex Kershaw. Fascinating individual. Running off the list, he was a hobo, a sailor, an oyster pirate, was in the gold rush of Klondike, was a commercial fiction writer, war journalist, ranch owner, and he had eyewitness accounts of the 1906 San Francisco earthquake.
What?
That...
He also sounds like a liar.
No, that's what's crazy. He had 23 novels, 3 memoirs, 22 nonfiction books, 3 plays, and over 120 short stories.
Oh my God, dude.
And he died at the age of 40.
Oh. Live fast, die hard, am I right? Die young, baby.
He was the pioneer of commercial magazine fiction, like the pulp short stories, which is why he has so many of them. He is one of the first writers to become an international celebrity. His stuff was sold worldwide. He earned a ton of money from doing this, which was another rare thing for authors. He was an innovator in the science fiction genre, because he's actually the same time as H.G. Wells, who does War of the Worlds, Time Machine, and The Invisible Man, which we're going to be covering soon. Very complicated individual, because like I said about him being interested in the common people, he was a radical in terms of workers' rights and socialism, but he was also very racist and interested in eugenics, which is selective breeding humans for their desirable qualities. He was extremely into alcohol and drugs, and some people think maybe even his early death was a suicide, or it was just...
What was it officially?
His body failed, like his liver, his organs failed because of potentially substances. But people then don't know if he did it on purpose. But I think mostly it's also like he lived 80 years of life in 40. Yeah. His body could not keep up.
Yeah, it sounds like he packed it in, man.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So, full life. The Call of the Wild part of his life.
This is one I heard about all through high school. I never read this, but this is one that I think a lot of like high school coaches of mine that always like leaned on, like, oh yeah, that was my favorite book. This will get you through. You ever have an animal, your favorite dog? You know, like, I always had this looming around this particular subject matter. So I've always kind of been interested in who was the man behind the genesis of it. So I mean, at least it's good to hear that he was insanely versatile. You know. But was he a ruffian? Was he a outdoorsman?
Yeah, so this is the start of his big career when he wrote this, what made him the international success. So he had done, in my list of things, the hobo, the sailoring, the oyster pirate stuff in California. And he went...
casually, the oyster sailing pirate stuff.
Casually. Yeah, traveled around the world. He was on boats going to Japan. He had returned to California to finish high school because, remember, he's so young. Had never even finished high school.
Boy... You need to go to school.
Got it done.
Get off this boat.
Yeah. Did a year in college in Berkeley, couldn't pay for it. So then he went off to the Klondike in Canada in 1897.
And created the Klondike Bar.
Not true. But he stayed there for a year, and this is where he gets this story from. Is his experiences in the Klondike. He developed scurvy while he was there, so that's why.
What year is this?
So he was there in 1897. He didn't write Call of the Wild. Call of the Wild didn't come out until 1903. So yeah, he had returned. He was unable to find work. He had random odd jobs after that. This was meant for the pulp market. Like I said, he was big in the short stories in the magazines. So it was originally released in 4 parts in the Saturday Evening Post.
Oh, fun.
Yeah.
I like that.
And then a publisher was like, yo, this needs to be a novel. Was enormously popular when it came out. He sold all the rights for $2,500, which in 1903, due to the inflation, he got $75,000 for selling this. But he sold all the rights. But that took his career off. The book has never been out of print since. And in 1904, he proposed a second book, which was the opposite. So Call of the Wild is about a dog's ascent or descent, however you look at it, into becoming wild
Kind
and
of
turning
a
into a
manifest
wolf.
destiny.
Yeah.
Almost like go west, young man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dog as metaphor.
Right. And so, yeah. So
My favorite metaphor.
Love it. The theme word of the day, if you're interested, that describes this is called pastoralism. So if you want to impress somebody, it's a return to nature. In American mythology, it's in the works of Rip Van Winkle, which came out in 1819, and Huckleberry Finn in 1884. So he is on that chain of American mythology of pastoralism, returning to nature. It's a reaction and an opposition to industrialization, social conventions. Other 20th century writers after him, Faulkner and Hemingway, follow through in that tradition as well as in the spareness and sparseness of their writing. But this second book, he was like, no, I'm going to write one that's the opposite. So it's a dog that's wild and then becomes civilized. And that's called White Fang. Which is the sequel to not any relation at all, but it's just the same concept but reversed.
Classic.
And some people think of it kind of like as an allegory to Jack London's life, in that society demanded conformity of him.
I bet. There we go. We see the reverberations through his life.
Yeah. But Call of the Wild, the book that came out in 1903, very different from the Disney-fied version that has come out just now, because the original book, the three terms that I would use to describe it is tragic, philosophical, and brutal. And Disney turned it into this PG, man helps dog, dog helps man. Not at all what the novel is.
I just gotta say, cartoonish. It's just cartoony, and I don't understand. Anyway,
it's just a different thing. It's a different thing entirely. And so it's like they just put the Call of the Wild branding and have a loosely similar story, but very, very...
Harrison Ford. Good.
Yeah.
Great. Theatrical release.
Very, very different, because violence. In the book, Buck, the main dog, kills Spitz, the other dog.
Really?
In a showdown. In the movie, I think he just runs off.
Oh my God. See, okay. I love Spitz, and I was really intrigued by this character. I was like, he's going to come back. He's out there in the woods. At some point, he said, no, just gone.
No, it's because they Disneyfied
because
it.
He dies in the actual book. The way they handle it in the movie, I'm like, what happened to Spitz? He will be coming back. And then no, he's just out of the movie. That's fascinating. And that's not the first, because I'm aware of some other, I didn't know this one, but I'm aware of some other things that they kind of tweak like that just as deftly. It's just
there's a bunch of incompetent people that then take over the sled, and in the book all the other dogs die.
And in the movie, then when I think the biggest difference is going into the third act, they use one of those characters that dies in the sled with the other dogs. They use one of him as the main antagonist through the back half of the film.
Yeah, he dies.
Yeah. He's not even in the book for the back. He's just part. Everybody somehow dies but him, or it's kind of vague about. And they don't want to say that all the dogs died. They don't want to say the dogs died, but they definitely don't say that they're alive. Right. But this guy's alive.
If you look at if you look at the Jack London stuff, it's like other stories of the time were sentimental. He got criticized for anthropomorphizing nature, but he goes to great pains in the book to be like, Buck, the dog, neither said nor thought this, he just did it. Like, he tries to put in how this stuff is just instinctual. And so he's trying to discuss the nature of brutality and what he actually saw being up there.
What you just touched on actually is a huge thing for me. The way that they went about doing the dog. All of the dogs are CGI, mind you. Some of them are convincing. Some of them make you think they had real dogs on set and they had real No, they didn't. But they did have a motion capture guy for the real dog. Somebody from like Cirque du Soleil who's actually there performing with the main actors. So he's human. So he's already visually, aesthetically, he's already a bit. They've heightened him. He's not photorealistic. He's got certain features that are really exaggerated. That's just on the base level aesthetics design. So then they match that with a Cirque du Soleil human performer that adds human thought and characteristic to a heightened visual of a dog that then contradicts the very text of which that shows the instinctual nature almost this plurality moral good of a dog
Yeah.
doing just what needs to be done. And they don't understand.
Removing itself from humanity.
Right, exactly.
That's the call
exactly.
of the wild.
So now what they have relied on is that the artistry of it is so beautiful that you emote with it as you would an actual dog.
Yeah.
Which is a bit easier, I have to say, from an audience point of view, it's a bit easier to just emote naturally with a real dog because it's just real and it's there and you can sense it, than trying to create one through some smoke and mirror show of odd cartoony aspects when it's supposed to be quote unquote photorealistic.
Yeah.
It's just one level of oddness placed on top of the other to create something that just feels like an animated movie.
That also cost so much money.
$109 million. It was shot almost exclusively in Los Angeles
on
sound
sound
stages.
stages.
It's Call of the Wild. Is this the only way that they could get Harrison Ford in the movie? I bet you.
Because he's not trucking it up to the Klondike.
What, you mean I have to get out of California? No. He's not going out of California. He's staying in L.A.
He's an old man.
He's
not hiking through the snow to do this. Yeah.
There's just... They emulated the Favreau technique that they started the Jungle Book, and they've now taken through a couple of things. We've covered Lion King,
right,
kind of to that approach, but just there's no single element ever that is so good that breaks free of all of the strange traps they've set themselves in.
Yeah,
in every moment of it.
Completely different from the source material. And a big part of that also, as you mentioned with Harrison Ford not wanting to leave, it's the human element that they'd throw in there. And like, he's just one of the humans that shows up at the end. He's the last human that Buck deals with, who's a little bit nicer to him and then gets killed. And like, it's just one stop along the story of this 4-part series in the Saturday Evening Post that then became a book. He's not the narrator. There's none of the crazy backstory.
Oh my gosh, wow.
There's no relation. You know what I mean? It's just
wow.
like this dog is going through his own chain of events to learn nature versus nurture, where his place is in the world. Should he consider himself a part of humanity or go out and embrace his wild nature? It's about the dog, but then they make it, like I said, the dog helps the man and the man helps the dog. It had nothing to do. And so this Thornton character, which is Harrison Ford, they have to throw in because they don't have a real dog even, so they got to put a person for you to relate to, I guess, in the movie. Yeah. But none of that is nearly even close to as important in the book.
That's bizarre.
Well, last little bit, this is, and then you can explain the other thing that you watched secretively without my knowledge. Mm-hmm. This is the 7th adaptation of Call of the Wild on film. The one that I thought was interesting, which I'll post a link to from YouTube, it's called What a Nightmare, Charlie Brown.
Oh.
It was a 1978 TV special. Snoopy has a nightmare, and it's basically the exact same plot as Call of the Wild, and he turns feral and grows fangs and gets all these other dogs in order.
I want to see that. That's great.
And it's part of a dog sled team and all this. And it goes through all of the beats of Call of the Wild, and then he wakes up on top of his doghouse and realizes he has the comfortable home of Charlie Brown.
Oh my gosh. That's beautiful.
But it's the only Peanuts special that features only Charlie Brown and Snoopy and none of the other characters.
Oh, fascinating.
It came out after the Christmas and the Thanksgiving and all that stuff. Yeah.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
I think that's so much more fun.
That's awesome. Yeah. That's so good.
But what was the movie that you watched that has to do with dogs?
So I left Call of the Wild just feeling deflated. I thought about leaving several times, to be quite honest. And I was looking for something more, and I was really struggling with like, well, what am I going to talk about? I can't just sit around and talk about how they should have done this or they should have done that. It was like, so I started thinking about what's like this, or what would I want in a movie like this even. I started thinking about both of those questions, and something came to mind. I happened to just take a chance on it, and boy, I'm glad I did. This is a Disney Plus original, just came out over Christmas. This is Togo, and it is about the 1925 serum run to Nome, Alaska. This is the same set of events that centers around the animated film Balto.
One of my favorite movies of all time.
I'm going to dash your hopes and dreams here. I'm so sorry. It's a beautiful film. It's a great film. Narratively, it's beautiful. It hits all the buttons. But I'm taking down Balto
totally
right now.
Unrealistic.
I'm taking down Balto right now. Here we go. So, for the transport of diphtheria antitoxin serum to Nome, Alaska. It's a 674-mile trek. 20 teams did this. 150 dogs participated. A statue was erected for this whole cause that saved this town and the children, commemorizing this in Central Park, New York.
That's Balto's.
But it is of Balto. So a lot of people in their minds think that Balto has done the lion's share of the work here. It's not true. Balto ran just 55 miles of this over 600-mile trek. It is, in fact, Togo who ran over 264 miles. The rest then spread up to, 55 for Balto. And even on that, they say that Balto was supposed to stop at another leg and hand off the serum, but they didn't do that. They just let the guy sleep. They literally just didn't wake up the guy and continued on. And after the fact, they said that it was a suspect that the musher did it on purpose so that he could capture the final claim.
One.
Yeah, capture the glory. Yeah, but even in all actuality, and contrary to the film, Balto was a husky. It was not a wolf dog, which that is some of the primary conflict in Balto, is that he is a wolf dog and some sort of husky. There's the draw between the wild and the suburban. That's non-existent. He was just a husky, and he was neutered. There's a big love interest in Balto that has, and similarly with Call of the Wild, that kind of pulls them to this to help procreate and add something to the breed. So this is actually where Togo actually does come in. Togo is responsible for the introduction of the Siberian Husky to the United States and Canada.
Oh, wow.
Because he was not neutered at all. So for the last 2 years of his life, he's just siring puppies, and it became one of the most sought after breeds because of actually some of their traits relating to humans. So Togo,
their dependability.
So Togo helped actually create what we know now as the Siberian Husky, introduced to the United States. And this was all headed up by the musher of Togo, Leonard Seppala. So he's played by Willem Dafoe in this movie, and the movie centers around Seppala raising Togo from kind of a distraught puppy that he doesn't believe in, but his wife keeps pushing him to, and cutting back to the actual run, which is probably some of the most harrowing journey you can take by dog. It's pretty incredible, and the film covers all of this with real locations and real dogs for almost the entirety of it.
In the Klondike?
Yeah, they're shooting in Canada for almost all of it. It's all shot on location. It's all using real dogs. They dress it up with some CG and some safe moments and stuff like that, but it's so tasteful. It's so well done. It is photorealistic because they actually photographed these things. And the dogs are incredible. So anything that I saw in Call of the Wild, I immediately saw real dogs do crazier, bigger, better stuff. The action sequences in Togo, not only are they to the nose real, how it happened, but they actually are pretty exciting. They're really, really exciting. It made me sad that I didn't get to experience this one in a theater because it really kind of held up the nines for it.
Yeah.
Another big stat here. Call of the Wild spent $109 million for
more for all the advertising and all that.
Oh my God, nonsense. I can't even imagine. All shot on sound stages in Los Angeles. Togo was shot on location with an A-plus cast for $40 million. Wow. I don't feel like they make anything like this for less than 50.
Yeah.
So to see something at 40, it was pretty staggering. Starring Willem Dafoe, and he gives an incredible performance. He stops me dead in my tracks. I to be honest, I didn't watch every frame in this movie. I put together a shelf and was just doing chores and stuff. And it was coming to a close, and it was his voiceover, how dogs linger with you if you're able to know a good one, if you're able to know a great one. And I think most people that grow relationships with their animals have known an incredible animal over their life, something that has stuck with them. And as my mom has been a champion dog show breeder at times in my life. I've been on a farm for most of my upbringing. I've seen a lot of lives beginning to end. And so in the closing moments of this movie, it was hearkening strongly to me of all of the dogs that I've seen my mom raise, that I've helped raise. Dogs that have gone on to become champions, dogs that went on to just have incredible lives with families, those types of things. And thinking about how the ones that stick out ones that weren't even ever yours, even how those kind
Yeah.
of still imprint on you. It was just so eloquently summed up at the end of this film. I just started crying. I've watched the movie, but I'm not really watched the,
Yeah.
and I'm just listening to him, wax prophetically about this dog. I'm only now learning about, talking about how no one's ever really gone. And I'm just like, I just bawled and went, this is amazing. This movie is incredible. And I've just kind of been on a tear since then. I went back and rewatched most of it and have been looking into all this. But I just thought, man, this is what I wanted out of Call of the Wild. This is really exciting stuff. It's a great cast. It's real dogs. It's real locations. It's just a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful movie in and out. And it's something that I don't even think people know exist.
Yeah.
It's stuck on Disney Plus. Like, go look up the end of this movie on YouTube. It's there and it's beautiful. And I just watch it to cry sometimes thinking about dogs. But
we all know you're watching those stupid Facebook dog videos. I'll post a link to the end of this.
But I just can't recommend it enough. Call of the Wild is some strange amalgamation. I don't really.
Maybe I can shed some light, because we were also interested. Evan did clue me in that he had watched this, so I did look a little into who created this, and then also who created Call of the Wild, and the studios that made them, which coincidentally is the same one, Disney.
It's mind numbing because so we had this kind of like come to we briefed barely some of our notes before the show, and I was like, so Disney put out Togo, and Call of the Wild is by Fox, and then I had to Taylor stopped me and I went, oh yeah, oh no, oh god, because they've been the same now for about a year.
Yeah, they're the same company.
And it just, everything I started to think about the production here, because there could not be a wider ocean between paths to production here for these two movies. One is shot entirely faked on a soundstage, and one is actually out there shooting real animals.
Well, and one of them will lose more money than the entire budget of the other one.
I don't know how at $109 million with something that really has had the soul ripped out of it, they expect to make a ton on it, and something that honestly, like Togo, that is based on a true story that they kept really true to the real story,
and one that I didn't know about, one that people don't know about that is actually interesting.
I don't know how putting Togo on Disney Plus and putting Call of the Wild out in theaters is the profitable way to go.
Well, maybe they'll learn. In a crazy turn of events that I found, the film The Call of the Wild that just came out was the first film released under officially what they call 20th Century Studios because of the Disney merger. That's why you were confused, because technically it's 20th Century Studios, but it was 20th Century Fox.
Right.
Coincidentally, the 1935 adaptation of Call of the Wild with Clark Gable was the last film made before 20th Century Pictures merged with Fox and became 20th Century Fox.
God. So this is what I live for.
It bookends the bizarre history of 20th Century Fox.
Echoes through the ether and time. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah, Call of the Wild was their first and last and last and first.
And Togo's still getting shoved under the rug.
I did look a little into Togo, and maybe this ties into how I'd love to ask questions of who made these things, because the director of Togo, Erickson Core,
he started as a director of photography. Actually, he shot Fast and the Furious. He's made his career doing that, but he's transitioned over into directing probably the last 5 to not quite 10 years.
Yeah.
And so this movie, he actually directed and shot, which is pretty impressive. Some people do that and they don't take the credit for it. Like that's how crazy it is to kind of do that. But
you want to hide it, because then it's weird if you did everything.
Like Soderbergh, like we talked about,
and maybe this thing for Erickson Core was a bit more personal, because I looked into an interview with him.
Oh, really?
He was an outdoor mountain guide for a while.
No way. I didn't know that.
So it didn't matter to him if he's out in the wild.
Let's go.
And I don't think he's proud of this, because I don't think it's legal anymore, but he owned a wolf.
Oh, God. This is great. I did not know any of that.
If you go back and look at the ending of Togo, at the very end of the credits, it says for Shalako, which was the wolf that he had.
Aww.
So he dedicated the whole film
gorgeous. Seeing
to his wolf dog.
Oh, that's beautiful, because that is the feeling that the movie gives you. It makes you feel like
personal.
It strikes the perfect balance of feeling like it's talking exactly about your dog, but it's talking about any of them. It really does a beautiful job of summing up that exact feeling, and that's really the pinpoint to launch into the last moments of the film that I just kind of just stopped me dead. I mean, I was taken away with it. It's beautiful.
And speaking to the truth and the realism of it, and I saw this in the same interview with the director, the dog that they used, Diesel, is apparently the 14th generation from the actual dog Togo.
That's pretty amazing.
So it's like a great grandson of this original dog that is now acting as that dog.
You can't ask for better than that. And they tried to take that kind of closeness to the events of it as much as they could throughout all of it. And some of the stuff is crazy that they say that this team did to actually survive, but apparently it is exactly how it was, as close as they could get it. I don't understand why you would go one way versus the other. Why would you not want to use a real dog?
Yeah.
A real dog is automatically emotive. You've got the audience right there. All it is your job is to capture the right reactions and string them together. The dog is doing its job, being adorable and lovable, and your job is made. Just be patient and do it. I don't know why you would.
So now I want to get to the last part, which I was fascinated by, and if anybody knows these people in real life, we'd love to talk to them, because it's not bashing it by any means, but we're just so curious how these things come about, because I looked into the creators of Call of the Wild, and all the questions we're asking seems like questions that they would have already answered in the production of it. The writer, Michael Green, and Evan will love this, he is also the writer. Granted, he wrote Call of the Wild 2020. He wrote Logan, Alien Covenant, and Blade Runner 2049.
No.
And all of those movies came out in 2017.
The dude's a madman.
Yeah.
He also wrote the Green Lantern from way back when with Ryan Reynolds.
But he's got something to him. So
definitely.
It doesn't necessarily make sense in terms of the screenplay. And then what I thought,
you never know. I mean, that exemplifies how versatile and how crazy a career can be, how crazy a creative can be, and they can do anything.
The other thing, the main person, the director of this, Chris Sanders, speaking to all of the different stuff relating to Disney and the whole thing being Disneyfied, it seems like the exact opposite of what he would want. So this is his live action directorial debut. He worked as a designer and co-writer and various things on Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Lion King, but was very critical of the Disney system at that time. I'll post a link, because in the late 1980s, he created an allegorical picture book. He wrote a whole book, drew it, wrote everything, called The Big Bear Aircraft Company. And it's an allegory for the creative process of Disney and how they're just trying to make airplanes that look exactly the same.
Fascinating.
When he was working on Mulan, he was especially critical of the death of the Mulan villain. Mm-hmm. And that's what they were all concerned about. And he was concerned about whether there has to even be a villain at all. Like he's like trying to play with the story and the form, and they're just trying to churn it out. So he's made a whole fake thing criticizing them, and then stepped away from Disney. Before that, though, like I said, he was so interested in this villain thing. He was motivated to create a story about a villain who then becomes a hero. He's like, I want to do the complete opposite. Mm-hmm. So he writes this little book about this character called Stitch, which is this monster.
Oh, no.
Yes. So later on, Disney around 2000 wanted to try smaller things. So when somebody told him, hey, pitch it again to Disney. So he pitched it. He co-wrote it with this other guy. He is also the voice of Stitch in the movie.
Oh, wow.
It's so fascinating to me because that story is about a kid and then an animal and a pet and their bond and all that stuff, which is a kind of Call of the Wild. It's right there in his wheelhouse. I love Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so unique, so individual. It doesn't feel like anything Disney would want to do. But he is the figurehead behind it. He's the voice. He came up with it. He, co-wrote it, directed it, all of that stuff. He was on, the next thing he was going to do, he was on a movie called American Dog, which eventually became Bolt. But he got removed as the director. Another dog movie about the Bonds, but then got Disneyfied. So he left, then went on to work with DreamWorks and was the director and writer of How to Train Your Dragon, which is another movie about the bond between an animal and people. And then he made this movie. And so it's so confusing to me that, like, looking at that trajectory and his critical nature and his understanding of that type of material, I guess it makes sense why they would pick him for it, but then how it became this thing.
Yeah, how is that the way that he wanted to go? How did that become the way?
With this other writer who's also amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds like with that guy and that guy, you would have something pretty good.
More like Togo. Yeah.
I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know what's going on. Also, I mean, and we'd be remiss to not say in the midst of all this Disney oddness, Bob Iger resigned. So
yeah, the CEO who bought Star Wars, who bought Marvel, who created Disney Plus, who put us in the spectacle that we are now, is stepping down. I mean, he's still going to be on the board or whatever, but he's not the CEO anymore.
Oddness happening all over Disney. Disney is, and this is, I think that this is just odd that this is at the forefront of the industry, and it just feels like a storm that we're all watching and turning on the side of a cliff. But what is happening with Disney and all of its entities and all that it puts out, and now remaking itself over and over and over and over again? At what point is there a direction for this company? At what point is it too big that it doesn't have a direction? Yeah. I don't know where this is going, but it is bizarre to be watching, and we're going to be watching and covering it. This is wild. But I wanted to take this opportunity to talk about something like Togo because it totally got overrun, and I think is a beautiful comparison for Call of the Wild.
If you have any thoughts on it, if you've seen either of these movies, please reach out to us at illiteratepod on Instagram.
Talk to us. We'll talk at you. We want to talk. We want to talk about what you're into, because that's what we're into, baby.
Next week, The Invisible Man.
It's going to be good.
Looks creepy.
All right, we'll talk at you later, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye.